¿Qué tranza, bandita? Bienvenidos. Muchas gracias por estar aquí, por acompañarnos en esta transmisión especial que se hace en honor a las víctimas de Palestina. Vamos a estar jugando Recon Wildlands y retransmitiendo distintos videos de YouTube. Todos se pueden encontrar en YouTube. Voy a dejar las ligas en la descripción. Vamos a darle al modo Ghost. Y espero poder subtitular todo esto porque son canales de Estados Unidos o canales más bien que están en inglés, que a la mayoría de las personas de habla hispana no les llegan y son la verdad buenos videos. Entonces voy a tener el audio de fondo de estos canales, estos videos. El primero que vamos a poner es el canal, el show de Jimmy Dore, de Jimmy Dore Show. Este canal es muy bueno si no lo conocen. Hay veces que cuando se meten en temas de salud, no he visto esos videos, pero todos los de política son muy buenos. Y vamos a ver este video que se publicó hace 8 horas. Todo lo que vamos a ver es de hoy, espero. Se llama Piers Morgan se vuelve contra Israel. This is the end for Israel. Piers Morgan, cuando más bien es un host de un show de debate y también ha sido presentador de noticias. Que protegió muchísimo. Disculpen, banda. Voy a seguir con este pedo, a ver. Un aleatorio. Protegió muchísimo a Israel desde el 7 de octubre. Aspecto lobo solitario. Y no daba su brazo a torcer el cabrón en todas las entrevistas, en todos los debates en que salía. Siempre salía él a defender a Israel. Y ya por fin aceptó que sí, que están cometiendo un genocidio. Ya después de que están a punto de completar el genocidio, ya lo reconoce. No mames, pinche Piers Morgan, chinga tu madre, cabrón. Ya nada más para salvarse el culo, lo dijo. Entonces vamos a poner este video, nada más el audio. Y voy a tener de fondo, más bien voy a bajarle el volumen a todos los sonidos del fuego.
El cártel ha capturado a Amaru, un veterano líder rebelde. Interroguen a un teniente de Santa Blanca para conocer la ubicación de Amaru. Después sáquenlo de ahí.
Creo que se me acabó la pila, bandita. Qué forma de empezar, ¿no? Pero ahorita conseguimos más pilas. Siempre tengan de repuesto, bandita. Ya, pues ya empezamos el modo Ghost.
Hora de ganarse el sueldo. Pongan su mejor cara.
No estoy a gusto trabajando con Pac Qatar y los rebeldes. Este tipo de ideología siempre
Su
acaba con
mejor
muchos
cara.
cadáveres en el piso.
¿Presientes que la misión irá bien, Nomad?
Al fin y al cabo se trata de una misión de venganza. Debemos estar concentrados y acabar cuanto antes para no estar entre conflictos políticos.
Para no estar entre conflictos políticos, que no mame.
políticos y las guerras del cártel. El
Sí, él
primer
lo
objetivo es
puso.
localizar al teniente de Santa Blanca para encontrar a Amaru.
Ajá.
Si estamos aquí por el Deep State, ¿cómo no va a ser político este pedo?
Yo conduzco.
A ver, voy a bajar el volumen a todo, bandita. Ok, vamos a dejarlo que un 70, ¿no? El de la voz igual. Puta, ¿cuántos volúmenes tiene? No mames, antes nada más había un volumen. Y radio vamos a desactivarla ahora sí porque neta nos va a estorbar. Yo lo siento muy fuerte, bandita. Chale. Le voy a bajar un poquito aquí. Y vamos a poner el video. This is the end for Israel.
They're the people that Piers Morgan is now jumping ship when it comes to when it comes to Israel. This is happening. Piers Morgan turns on Israel, and by turns on, he doesn't mean he put on a skirt and started dancing for Netanyahu, because that's a different kind of turn on. But here it is. Let's listen.
He has.
So now it's clear to everybody that Israel, what they're doing and what Netanyahu's doing, and what Trump is doing by censoring people and kicking people out of the country that we want in the country, meaning people who have green cards or who have residency, who are here pursuing academia, and he's kicking them out. The brightest, the best and brightest that we welcome here, he's kicking them out because they cross Israel, because they wrote an op-ed for their ideas. So again, this is the end of Israel, and this is the end of Israel as an apartheid state. And people are starting to realize it because the world is turning on them. There's a brain drain in Israel. Everybody's leaving there. Their economy's crashing, and now they're realizing that. They're the people that they used to claim to be fighting against. And here's Piers Morgan, and he finally realized it. Here it is.
Listen, you and I have talked about this war in Gaza ever since it started, this phase of the 75-year conflict. And I have resisted going as far as you have done.
Not only has he resisted it, but he shamed anybody who told the truth about Israel, and he wanted to make you genuflect first at the altar of Benjamin Netanyahu and Zionism. No matter what you said, he would say, "But do you condemn Hamas? But never ask somebody, do you condemn Israel? Do you condemn Benjamin Netanyahu? Do you condemn Zionism?" So here he is, finally got his head out of his ass.
In your criticism of the Israeli government, I resist no more. I think we've reached common ground about what we view is happening and has been happening through this period of this blockade, which frankly is just starvation of the people there, including so many innocent young women and children. And I think that the incessant bombing and killing, and we don't know how many civilians have been killed, but it is on a daily basis. It looks like hundreds of people every day, with no apparent attempt, it seems to me, to have any real plan for how this ends or what happens when it ends, other than if you look at what Smokescreen has been saying, probably the most right-wing member of a very right-wing government, he is talking in a genocidal language about kicking all the Palestinians out. So I think you and I have reached a place in the last few weeks where we are in agreement. But my question for you, Mehdi, is how does this end?
So now he agrees with Mehdi Hassan, who told the truth one time on MSNBC, and they fired him. Do you remember that? He told the truth. He told the truth about Israel, and they fired him immediately. Yeah. All the lies he told about Syria, all the lies he told about Ukraine, all the lies he told about Russiagate, all the lies he told about the Twitter files, and all the lies he told about Matt Taibbi, it didn't get him any purchase, because as soon as he told the truth, you don't get fired for lying at corporate news. They fired him immediately. He told the truth about Israel, and they immediately fired him. So there is
3 strikes you're out.
So what he's saying is that he agrees with Mehdi Hassan, and Mehdi Hassan has been calling what Israel's doing a genocide. So there it is. It's done. It's over because Piers Morgan is like the guy who runs around telling everybody they're not dressed up enough at a party. Why are you dressed so poorly? And then he realizes his schwanz has been hanging out the whole time, and that's what this is. That's what he's finally figured out. He's the he's finally realizing that it's not going to turn out the way he thinks it's going. He's not going to be on the winning side of this. That's what this is. He's finally realized that the light goes out in the fridge when the door is closed. He finally realized this.
No, he's waiting to see when to jump off the ship.
Yep.
They all do that. They think that's called being smart. That's how that scumbag has survived to this day.
Yes.
He's the guy from that hacking scandal. Remember that?
Yes. He was wrong about everything. And he was wrong about same thing he did with COVID. He shamed and slandered people right up until the point where it wasn't cool to do that anymore. Where he was going to start, it was going to be bad for him. So then he just jumped ship.
Yeah, so, but the Cuomo point in nature.
But Chris
Cuomo point.
Yeah, the Chris Cuomo point, right? So here, I love this. One day when it's safe, when there's no personal downside to calling a thing what it is, when it's too late to hold anybody accountable, everyone will have always been against it. And that's
a fact.
That's today for Piers Morgan. That's today for Piers Morgan. I like this. I don't feel like we should let this absolve him of his complicity. I agree. Pierce is frantically cleaning up house as it seems that he's realizing being on the wrong side of history here will have devastating consequences for him and his career. Fortunately, the internet never forgets. 3 weeks ago, Pierce would have been screaming anti-Semite. That's exactly right. Because here he was doing it. So here's Jeremy Corbyn saying many in our media are finally... This is on May 16th. Many in our media are finally waking up to the unspeakable horrors that Palestine are enduring in Gaza. It's too late. You refuse to condemn Hamas. This is on May 16th. You refused to condemn Hamas for their unspeakable horrors on October 7th when I asked you. So I suggest you shit this one out. Oh, really?
Why is it unspeakable? Because the IDF did it and not Hamas?
By the way, he didn't. He did condemn Hamas for the October 7th. Piers Morgan is a liar. Corbyn has repeatedly and specifically condemned Hamas and their actions on October 7th, including on Piers Morgan's show. Here it is. At every speech I've made, I've utterly condemned the killing of October 7th. It was the taking of innocent life. It was wrong under any circumstances. I don't support Hamas. I'm not a friend of Hamas. October 7th was abominable and appalling. I do not approve or support or welcome Hamas. So that's it. So Piers Morgan has spent the last 18 months asking every pro-Palestinian guest to condemn Hamas. He's never asked pro-Israel guests to condemn Israel. Corbyn refused to play Morgan's squalid little game. Morgan epitomizes the pro-Israel, anti-Palestine bias in the media. And here it is. So here's a lady carrying her dead child, and here's Piers Morgan with a microphone. But do you condemn Hamas? And here he is. Now here he is with Jeffrey Sachs saying the same thing.
It just seems to me, I don't see what the end game is here. I don't see victory in the air for Israel. I see them,
and that's why he's switching, because he sees that Israel's actually going to be losing this. The world is turning, and so he's not doing this because he has great moral character. He's doing this because he cares about his own skin. He cares about his future as a broadcaster. He doesn't actually have a moral compass. That's why he's for the Ukraine war and lied about it, even though he knows he's lying. That's why he's for Israel up until this moment, because it now becomes apparent to him that he's going to be on the losing side. And if it was clear that he was going to be on the winning side, he'd still be calling you an anti-Semite. So here it is.
Eroding global support rapidly with what is now happening.
So, and he sees global support is eroding. So now he's like, well, I gotta stop being on the wrong side.
How do you see it?
I agree with you. What this Israeli government is doing is catastrophic. It is a genocide. It's extraordinarily cruel. It's extraordinary.
Now, just a few weeks ago, he would have stopped and said, well, it's not a genocide. And do you condemn Hamas? And that's anti-Semitic. But now the wind is blowing differently, and so he just sits there and lets Jeffrey Sachs say it. What do you want to say, Kurt?
He'd say, he'd go, is it?
That's
what he said. genocide kids. Is it bad? Is it?
Yeah, okay. Is it bad? Right.
Vulgar, vicious, ugly. It's disgusting beyond imagining. The problem is that Netanyahu and his ilk and a lot of the political elite class for decades has said, we will rule over everybody. There will never be a Palestinian state. There are many motivations for that view. One is perhaps Netanyahu's view, this is the only way we can be secure. The other, which is also very popular among parts of the Israeli government, is that God promised us everything. These other people are on our land. Now, whatever you say about it, there is no end game of peace on the Netanyahu plan, because the Netanyahu plan, and this has been for decades, is to rule over the entire land. And that means ruling over the Palestinians either in an apartheid state, in other words, oppressing the Palestinian people, or killing them, or expelling them in ethnic cleansing. It's clear that all of those methods are deliberately being used now. This constant shouting, Hamas, 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 is not the point at all. The point is that the political endgame for Netanyahu, Smotrich, Ben-Gvir, the leaders of this government, is to rule over the entire territory of what was mandatory Palestine. In other words, for Israel to control everything. In fact, Netanyahu makes no bones about it. He doesn't hide anything. He says, we will control Gaza. Well, what does that mean? It either means extraordinary oppression, or it means ethnic cleansing, or it means mass murder. Now, Israel's committing mass murder right now. It is as simple as that. And Israel says, well, it's about Hamas, but what is their end game that they offer? They don't offer an end game. They are very clear on the inside. I know what the end game is, because if you follow the Israeli politics, the end game is we control everything. In fact, some of this extremist coalition is so vulgarly, rapidly, violently extreme that their interpretation of, quote, God's promise to the Jewish people is parts of Egypt, parts of Syria, parts of Lebanon. They have a very expansive view, and indeed Israel is in Syria now. It is in Lebanon now. And there are parts of this coalition that say, we're going to stay there. So the problem here is a political problem. You're completely right. It is a political problem. You're completely right. It cannot be solved by war or defeating Hamas. That's not even their purpose. Their purpose is to control all the land, what they call Greater Israel, or Yisrael Hashlema, meaning the big expanse of Israel. It's a madness. It's a zealotry. It's a cruelty. It's nothing less than that. And there is no peace possible until there is a state of Palestine living in peace on the internationally recognized borders, which are the borders of the 4th of June, 1967, alongside Israel. What Netanyahu would never tell you, what this Doron Spielman, who was shouting just a moment ago, would never tell you, is that all of the Arab states have said, we will have peace when there is a state of Palestine. Mm-hmm. What they won't tell you is that the entire 57-member Organization of Islamic Cooperation has said, we will have peace with Israel when there is a state of Palestine as a UN member state, properly constituted. And in fact, and you know I hang out at the United Nations, more than 180 countries of the world say this, with a population of more than 95% of the world population. There is a madness, a sickness of the Israeli government, this extremist, cruel and zealot government. But the tragic part is the United States.
It is supporting it. And here's the Greater Israel Project, in case you don't know what he's talking about. So there's Israel. They want to have part of Iraq. They're already in Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, parts of Egypt.
That's all they want. Take Iran. It's right there.
So there it is. So that's
take some of Saudi Arabia.
So this isn't just like something I'm saying. This is their plan. It's called the Greater Israel Plan, the Great Expansion, as Jeffrey Sachs just said. This is their plan.
The thing they said Putin wanted to do that he doesn't want to do is the thing Israel wants to fucking do.
Exactly right. So good to see Piers Morgan finally realize that he's on the losing side and on the wrong side of history. So that's good. I guess
the whole time.
And he, well, I don't know if he knew that the whole. I think he was thinking that it would go on indefinitely, or maybe he just thought, yeah, maybe he did know. Maybe he did know eventually this was going to turn out like this for Israel. But at the time, it was better for him to go along with the establishment. So whatever the establishment does, he goes with it. He went with it during COVID. He went with it during Russiagate. He went with it during the Ukraine war. I'm sure he did it with Syria. I'm sure he was with it on Iraq. And sure, here we are.
He said, "Is it wrong to kill children?"
He said, "It's."
Some girl said, "That's despicable," and that's horrible. He goes, "Is it?
Is it?
You don't say something like that unless you're that type of dude."
Yeah.
So there's nothing there.
So anyway, it's good, but again, it's helpful that he did this. So good for him.
Kudos to him.
Kudos. Come see us live in Los Angeles, Buffalo, Toledo, Montreal, Ottawa, Glasgow, Manchester, Belfast, Dublin, London, Liverpool, Birmingham. Go to Jimmy.
Yuri y Polito se conocieron en un precario hospital de Chiapas. El Polito hacía su residencia. La Yuri trabajaba de enfermera. Fue amor a primera vista. Desde el primer instante se hicieron inseparables. Un amor como ningún otro. Un día, un narco llamado La Plaga entró en urgencias, balaceado. Su situación era delicada, pero Yuri y el Polito pudieron salvarlo. La Plaga se lo agradeció con regalos, invitaciones a fiestas exclusivas y hasta con un auto nuevo. Con el tiempo, La Plaga puso a Yuri y Polito en un equipo médico personal de Santa Blanca. Pero ese no era su trabajo principal. Yuri y Polito son expertos en anatomía. Conocen cuánto dolor puede soportar una persona antes de morir. Saben cómo mantener a una persona viva y despierta para que pueda sentir el dolor. Y sobre todo saben perfectamente cómo causarlo. A eso se dedican en la provincia de Itacua. Cuando Santa Blanca captura a alguien que se niega a hablar, la Yuri y el Polito lo hacen cantar. Torturan gente. Como dije, había 4 personas en la habitación la noche que Ricky Sandoval fue asesinado. El Sueño, Ricky, Yuri y Polito. Dejaron a Ricky con vida mientras Sueño lo torturaba. Sin parar, durante 47 horas. Al final, Ricky Sandoval cedió y el Sueño lo ejecutó.
Cámara bandita, pues vamos a poner otro video. Este es igual del canal de Jimmy Dore. Se llama Netanyahu está llevando a cabo su guerra entre Estados Unidos e Irán. A ver, déjenme ver el título en inglés. Y es de hace 3 días. En inglés es Iran War is on. Que significa es un hecho que va a darse la guerra con Irán. Primero Dios, esto no va a pasar. Pero hay que estar enterados de bien de qué pedo con los gringos porque tienen en sus manos el destino del mundo.
He picked up a piece of paper. He said, by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, are we still going to war with Iraq? And he said, oh, it's worse than that. He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper. He said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today. And he said, this is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran.
The war with Iran is coming. And not only because of this, I've showed you this before, but they've been planning this since before 9/11. They've been planning all the wars they did. They've done like Libya, Afghanistan, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq. So here it is. Watch this. This is General Wesley Clark, and right after 9/11. He got the 411 on the plan they had already cooked up before 9/11 that they were going to use 9/11 as the excuse to go do, and we only have one country left. Here it is.
About 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld and Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. I went downstairs just to say hello to some of the people on the Joint Staff who used to work for me, and one of the generals called me and he said, "Sir, you got to come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, No. He says, we've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq. This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, "We're going to war with Iraq. Why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do." So,
hey, remember when we went to war with Iraq and Iran won? Do you remember that? Okay.
I said, "Well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda?" He said, No. He says, "There's nothing new that way. They've just made the decision to go to war with Iraq." He said, "I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we've got a good military and we can take down governments." And he said, "I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail."
That's actually not the reason. He's going to tell you the real reason.
So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper. He said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today. And he said, this is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran.
So the last one on the list is Iran, and that's the one that Benjamin Netanyahu is going to get us into that war by hook or by crook. And I'm going to show you some more information right now that shows that that's almost inevitable.
Wait, Jimmy, it sounds, the way he said it, it sounds almost like they needed a terror attack to happen.
It's almost like
they always need terrorists, and they never want them to go away.
That's why we invented Al-Qaeda. And I'm not making that up. Hillary Clinton is the one who said that we invented Al-Qaeda. We know why? Because we did. And now Al-Qaeda is running Syria for us. We were working with Al-Qaeda in Syria. And now the head of Al-Qaeda is now the head of Syria. And he doesn't wear his jihad costume anymore. And he wears a blue suit. And he doesn't call himself Jelani anymore. He calls himself, "I'm not a terrorist." And
that's a nice thank you for your service, ain't it?
Isn't it? Yeah. America decides wars well in advance, just so you know, because it's like a Christmas list. Just get them out of the way. And so here's the first proof that the United States is setting up this negotiation with Iran so that Iran cannot come to a reasonable treaty with us over their nuclear program. This is Witkoff. That's Donald Trump's negotiator with Iran. And here, watch what he says.
Well, the president has been very clear. He wants to solve this conflict diplomatically and with dialogue. And
that's what they say. That's what Trump says. That's what he's saying. They want to settle this with Iran. By the way, I didn't know we had a problem with Iran. I don't have a problem with Iran. Iran never attacked us, never invaded us. Ain't never going to invade.
Let Israel fight it out with them if they want to so bad. What's the problem? Ain't my problem.
This is about
good luck, Israel. Best of luck to you.
This is about Israel, and it's all about how Iran can't be allowed to have a nuclear weapon. But we can have a nuclear weapon. Israel can have nuclear weapons. Pakistan can have nuclear weapons. China, North Korea can have nuclear weapons. Russia can have. But somehow Iran is a special case. So here's what he says. They want to have a diplomatic solution, but guess what?
He's given all the signals. He's directly sent letters to the supreme leader. I have been dispatched to deliver that message as well, and I've delivered it. But on the other hand, we have one very, very clear red line, and that is enrichment. We cannot allow even 1% of an enrichment capability. We've delivered a proposal to the Iranians that we think addresses some of this without disrespecting them, and so that's important. We want to get to a solution here, and we think that we will be able to. But everything begins from our standpoint, John, with a deal that does not include enrichment. We cannot have that because enrichment enables weaponization, and we will not allow a bomb to get here.
So that
you will.
Yeah.
They have bombs they're going to send there, and there's nothing you can do about them. Stupid.
So that is what's called a lie. So they're pretending that they want to negotiate a settlement, but they know that's a non-starter. They know that Iran will never agree to that because they had an enrichment program going under the Barack Obama administration where they had lots of inspectors that would come in and make sure they're not using it to build a nuclear bomb. So they don't want to go that route. They just want to say, you don't get to have a nuclear program. Saudi Arabia gets to have a nuclear program. North Korea, Pakistan, China, Russia, Israel, they all get to have nuclear. And of course us. We're the only ones who ever dropped it. And Michael Tracy says, if anyone suspected that the purpose of this negotiating exercise was to set up an impossible endpoint, humiliating Iranian capitulation, and then when Iran balks, which they're going to, use that as the pretext to bomb Iran. We tried to negotiate first. There's growing evidence that your suspicion is correct, that this is all a pretext. Just like October 7th, that Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu funded Hamas, and then allowed them to do that attack on October 7th, withheld their military, so they could use that as a pretext to go in and do what they always wanted, which was to wipe out the Palestinians in Gaza, flatten it, and take it over, which is what they're doing. Same thing is happening here. That's exactly what. So they're setting a precondition that they know Iran will never agree to. And so then they could use that, just as he said, hey, we tried to negotiate. And so that's what's happening right here. So, hey, good news. The Iran war is back on, ladies and gentlemen. And here Michael Tracy says the use of the phrase red line is conspicuous because the Trump and the GOP still love mocking Obama for drawing a red line with respect to Syria in 2012. I remember that. And then failing to bomb Syria quickly enough. So they're
Let the false flag settle in first, guys.
So they're eager to prove they'll enforce their red lines, unlike the weakling Democrats. So that's why they're using the term red line, so they can go, look, we're serious about our red lines. And here is Reza Nasri. He says that this is the response to what, from Iran, what Witkoff just said. Their response is, these statements are completely detached from reality of the negotiations. Uranium enrichment in Iran will continue. If they are genuinely interested in ensuring that no nuclear weapon is being produced, we are ready to cooperate with that, just like they did under Barack Obama. And we'll have international people come in, inspectors come in and make sure we're not using it for a nuclear weapon. In fact, the Ayatollah doesn't want that. He stated he doesn't want a nuclear weapon, and he's against it, in fact. I think on religious...
They don't need them. No one can use them. This is such a pageant about nuclear weapons. You can't use them, or you're guilty of using them. They probably have better weapons that they know never to reveal they have, so that they can use them.
They have hypersonic missiles in Iran, which we don't even possess. So if they are genuine, this is the Iran response. If they are genuinely interested in ensuring that no nuclear weapon is being produced, we are ready to cooperate with that. If their demands are unrealistic, it is only natural that they will not be met. So they're creating conditions that they know won't be met, so then they can go, we had to bomb them because we had to stop Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. And that's the guy who said this. It's the foreign minister of Iran, this guy Abbas Araghchi. And so here's what Alan Mizrahi has to say about it. He says, I'm raising my probability estimate for the U.S.-Iran war to above 90% again, and it may happen very soon. Something very meaningful happened in the last 10 days or so. It looks to me like Trump was given the impression that he was free to sign a deal with Iran, but then all at once, around the Gulf Circus, where he was just at in Saudi Arabia, someone stepped in and made it clear to Trump that no deal, you cannot sign a deal with Iran, period. And that someone, probably Benjamin Netanyahu. The U.S. is now back to the no enrichment line, which is a non-starter for Iran. As the whole world knows, Iran made it clear all along. Iran has made that clear. Hey, you know what else? When he said that they can't even have 1% enrichment, you know what else is less than 1%? Our chances of winning a war with Iran, less than 1%. So Witkoff is like negotiating with Iran what Chris Christie is to a juicer. Total strangers. He goes on, it is frighteningly obvious that the Trump White House is completely run by Israel and the AIPAC lobby. I don't like to call it the Jewish lobby. I call it the Israel lobby. And that they are taking Americans to a historic disaster in a war with Iran that will destroy the Middle East, wreck world economy, make an end to Israel, and send the U.S. into a spiraling social and economic crisis of unimaginable proportions. Iranian voices are beginning to reflect this understanding, namely that the country they built is about to be pummeled, maybe using atomic weapons as well. Iranian voices are beginning to reflect this understanding. Okay, weird. The chances that the U.S.-Iran deal are virtually non-existent at this stage? The chances for a U.S.-Iran deal are virtually non-existent at this stage, and I suspect that the last Israeli extermination push in Gaza was partially made to pressure the Trump administration on Iran. Israel is ending the world as we know it. Israel is doing it. Israel.
He's done it again! That is a fact! You fucking little bastard! He's done it again! You dirty bastards! You've done it again!
So here is more proof that the deal with Iran is not going. They're not going to reach a deal with Iran, and the United States is going to initiate a war. And don't be surprised if there's what they call a false flag, meaning, oh, it looked like Iran attacked us first. That is going to be a false flag. They might attack a military base or an installation or Israel, but that will have been done by Israel or the CIA or the Mossad or all of them. And it might even be here in the United States. And because that would really, just like 9/11, it got real. People were really thirsty, bloodthirsty for revenge after 9/11, which is why we were allowed to do what we did in Iraq, even though Iraq had nothing to do with 9/11. So right here, Hamas says, so Witkoff personally promised Hamas to lift the Gaza blockade in exchange for Eden Alexander. You know how when Trump got the last remaining American hostage, prisoner of war, when he got him released, the reason why Hamas agreed to that was because Witkoff promised Hamas that we're going to lift the Gaza blockade. We're going to give you humanitarian aid. We're going to give you medicine, food, and water. Well, guess what? They broke it. They broke that. A senior Hamas official told DropSite that the group received a direct commitment from Donald Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, that 2 days after the release of the U.S. citizen and Israeli soldier Eden Alexander, the Trump administration would compel Israel to lift the Gaza blockade and allow humanitarian aid to enter the territory. Witkoff, according to the official, also promised that Trump would make a public call for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza and for negotiations aimed at achieving a permanent ceasefire. It was a deal, said Bassam Naim, a member of Hamas's political bureau who has previously engaged in direct talks with U.S. officials. He said the pledge was made by Witkoff himself. In an interview with DropSite, Naim said the agreement was if we release Alexander, Trump will speak out thanking Hamas for its gesture, obliging Israel on the second day to open the borders and allow aid to come into Gaza. And Trump would call for an immediate ceasefire and to go for negotiations to end the Israeli-Hamas war. He did nothing of this. They didn't violate the deal. They threw it in the trash. The White House did not respond for. So now what's happening is that Netanyahu is allowing limited humanitarian aid. So they could say, look, we were doing it, but they're not. And so that's, again, another pretext for them to do more war on Hamas and Iran. So this is what Propaganda and Company tweeted out. War with Iran is all but guaranteed unless Iran decides to capitulate on every single demand that the United States makes. Why? Because Witkoff has made a serious mistake. Hamas revealed that Witkoff himself negotiated the deal with them directly to free Eden Alexander in exchange for a restart to negotiations and for the entry of aid. After receiving Eden, Witkoff reneged on that. This was a major mistake by Witkoff because the more important negotiations for both he and America are the nuclear deal talks with Iran. By reneging on the deal with Hamas, Witkoff exposed himself as a bald-faced liar. There is simply no way around that Iran will trust a single word. There is simply no way now that Iran will trust a single word that Witkoff says. So they know Witkoff isn't going to be negotiating in good faith. So Witkoff has already killed the Iran negotiation deal by going back on the deal he made with Hamas. The Ayatollah has warned Iran that America cannot be trusted and that Witkoff has just validated and confirmed that by lying to Hamas on something as basic as a renewed attempt to discuss a ceasefire and the entry of food and medicine to a besieged people. The reason why this is important is not just because it reveals how untrustworthy Witkoff and the Americans are during negotiations. Many people already knew that and weren't surprised, but some speculate that the entire point of the negotiations with Iran was to have them drop their guard so the Americans could regain the element of surprise before launching an all-out covert war and bombing run to overthrow the government and destroy the nuclear facilities. By lying to Hamas, Witkoff blew his cover and has given Iran confidence in their understanding of Americans' true intent regarding the negotiations. What happens next? Most likely a series of back-and-forth negotiations where goalposts move and the same old items are repeatedly agreed to, such as reducing uranium enrichment and allowing technical teams to discuss execution. In my opinion, these negotiations are really just an attempt to save face and tell the American public that the Trump administration tried what it could do to avoid a war, but the Iranians were just too evil and stupid to choose peace. The average uninformed fan dueling gambling, fantasy football, and Pokemon playing American will be too distracted to care or to protest. The war is pretty much already underway, as reported by Ken Klippenstein in his three-part article series about the Trump war plan for Iran and Yemen. I just returned from a trip to Tehran, and after speaking to some locals, I can tell you that they also believe the war has already started. In fact, they believe it started a year ago when Raisi mysteriously died in a helicopter crash. Now, that was the president, Ibrahim Raisi, died in May of 2024 in a helicopter crash while returning from a dam inauguration near the Azerbaijan border. So, in fact, they believe that he was actually assassinated.
Oh, you don't say.
They also believe, so that's the president of, they also believe that the random explosion and fires taking place, like the one recently at Bandar Abbas, are covert attacks on Iran to disrupt the country. While Iran has everything it needs from energy to water to food, people still feel the pressure of sanctions, and you can really feel the cultural divide, especially in the city. It's the divide that the Zionists hope to exploit in their effort to blitzkrieg Iran and upend their government. Iran is stronger than it appears despite the recent display of weakness, so we will see what happens. Just don't be fooled by Witkoff any longer. The cat is out of the bag. Witkoff is Israel first, just like Trump. So Here is Trump said he wants to use power for peace. He's lying. And that is the Imam, Iran's supreme leader. He's saying that Trump said he wants to use power for peace. He's lying. And I have to agree with him.
Maybe he's not lying, but he literally doesn't have the power because our government's fake and controlled by sources that you don't get to vote for ever.
Yeah. So they're Israel first. And that means, so Trump, his whole attraction to MAGA was that he wanted to get us out of these wars in the Middle East. He wanted to bring our troops home, end these wars, invest that money back in the United States. But Trump, just like Witkoff, just like the all American politicians, are puppet to Netanyahu and AIPAC, the Israel lobby. And so that's why there's going to, seems like over a 90% chance that there's going to be a war with Iran, and that Trump is going to go down as a horrible president because he went back on his own word but he's going to try and blame it on Iran. And of course and as soon as a war starts, the media is going to rally around Donald Trump because he's doing the bidding of the military-industrial complex and of Israel. And so then they're going to stop criticizing him. They're not going to criticize him over his war for Iran. That's what's going. So he doesn't face any opposition. The Congress wants to go to war with Iran. Trump, Witkoff wants to go to Iran. But most importantly, Benjamin Netanyahu wants war with Iran. And that's why we're going to go to war with Iran. And it couldn't be any clearer what's going to happen. Anything you want to say about this, Kurt?
I'm waiting to see how many people fall for it this time. Because honestly, God, the next fake ass terror attack, if you still fall for that, you were the biggest chump in the world.
I agree. If you fall for the next terrorist attack, it will most certainly be a false flag, and it will be used so we could go to war. And then Trump is going to say, hey, we tried to negotiate with them, and we cannot allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon. I don't know why. We allowed Israel to have a nuclear weapon. North Korea has a nuclear weapon. Pakistan gets to have nuclear weapons. Does India have nuclear weapons? I'm pretty sure India. So everybody has nuclear weapons, but somehow it's extra bad if Iran gets one. So
they used to say it back in the day when Christopher Hitchens was alive, and the whole idea is Iran's so crazy, they'll just shoot it at Israel immediately. That was the big propaganda.
Yeah.
That was a bunch of movies. Meanwhile, Israel officially doesn't have nuclear weapons.
Officially.
They stole them, lied about it, gave them to South Africa because they really support apartheid. It's just unbelievable that these maniacs are allowed to have a nuke, and I'm supposed to give a rat's ass about Iran having a power source.
And so if you fall for the war in Iran, you're a sucker and a dupe. But I don't believe most of MAGA will fall for it. I know Marjorie Taylor Greene, even when Trump was bombing Yemen, tweeted out, nobody voted for this. Nobody voted for this. So nobody did vote for this. But you're going to get it anyway. Just like nobody voted for a war with Iraq. Nobody voted for us to occupy Afghanistan for 20 years. Nobody voted for us to overthrow Libya. Nobody voted for us to overthrow Syria. And now Al-Qaeda is running it. Just like all of that, nobody voted for any of this. But you're getting it anyway because Trump is not America first. He's Israel first. He's not MAGA. He's MIGA. That is, make Israel great again. And so this is all about the greater Israel project. That's what this is all about. And don't fall for it. And the MAGA people I know, the MAGA people who come to my show, the lefties that come to my show, they're not going to fall for it. I'm not going to fall for it. We'll see how the politicians stand up. If Rand Paul stands up, if Marjorie Taylor Greene stands up, who else? Oh, of course, Massey will stand up against this, right? But that's not enough. What we need is grassroots people to stand up and not fall for it, because the media is going to be 100% on board for a war with Iran. Just like they were 100% on board with the war with Iraq, 100% on board with the war with Afghanistan, Libya, 100% on board with the war with Ukraine, 100% on board with the war in Syria. They're 100% on board. They're all for it. And so Trump won't have any meaningful opposition against this, and there's everything for him to go for it, except the MAGA base to revolt against it. So fingers crossed you do that. Trump is proving, once again, Witkoff certainly is proving he's MIGA, not MAGA, and that's bad for the United States. Come see us live in Los Angeles, Buffalo, Toledo, Montreal, Ottawa, Glasgow, Manchester, Belfast, Dublin, London, Liverpool.
Vamos a poner otro video, bandita. Cámara, bandita, este video se llama Yemen le enseñó a Trump esta brutal verdad. Yemen broke Trump. Y es una entrevista del canal Dialogue Works, el diálogo funciona, que está hosteado por Nima R. Al-Khorshid. Él es el host del programa, él hace las entrevistas y esta vez invitó a Scott Ritter, que es un favorito de muchos de estos programas de mesas redondas o de entrevistas, y a Mohammad Marandi, también otro regular. Entonces vamos a ver lo que tienen que decir sobre la guerra de Yemen, la guerra de Estados Unidos con Yemen, que está directamente ligada a la guerra con Palestina, ¿no? Porque Yemen está haciendo lo que está haciendo solamente para que Israel se detenga. Este video es de hace 6 días.
With you, Scott, with you, and I don't know if you saw the new article in the New York Times. They're talking about that Houthis, and we're able to shut down F-16 and F-35 jets. And is that one of the main reasons that Donald Trump has decided to get something in with Yemen?
No, not at all. There's a difference between this is written by somebody who doesn't understand anything about combat, etc. If you fly an aircraft into a defended airspace, you can be shot down because they have defensive capabilities. This is why we train our pilots in certain tactics. This is why we use, electronic warfare, etc., to prevent from being shot down. But there's a difference between being engaged and being shot down. There's no doubt that the Houthi engaged F-16 and F-35 aircraft. There's no doubt that American aircraft had to take defensive measures to avoid being shot down. Welcome to war. This is missing the point. The point isn't that the Houthi engaged F-16s and F-35s. The point is that the Houthi beat the United States. That's what we have to, let's think strategically. Let's stop getting down into the weeds. I'm not picking on you, but I mean, this is an absurdity. The United States entered a military campaign. Let's just be fair to General Kurilla and the Central Command. They rightfully said that they needed to engage in a multi-month-long campaign to degrade Yemen's air defense capabilities and to, this strategic air campaign designed to defeat Yemen. Very expensive, and we would have run out of ammunition. And the political direction was, no, we need to compress this into a 30-day campaign, which General Kurilla attempted to do, and we failed. We didn't defeat the Houthi. We didn't suppress the Houthi. They continued to be able to not only fire against Israel, but to also threaten American shipping, to include military shipping. The most important thing here is that the Houthi were developing a targeting solution for U.S. naval warships, including the Harry S. Truman. We saw this played out in reality when the Harry S. Truman had to take emergency evasive action to avoid being struck by a Houthi weapon that caused an F-18 that was being put into position for launch to be thrown overboard. That means that tells me that the Houthi understood the window of vulnerability. Aircraft carriers, when they launch aircraft, when they recover aircraft, are very vulnerable because those are period of times when you can't maneuver or you shouldn't be maneuvering. You should be maintaining a constant heading so the airplanes can take off and airplanes can land. And what it is that the Houthi apparently were able to understand when the United States was going to be preparing to launch or recover aircraft and to time their attacks accordingly. This could be fatal for the Harry S. Truman. Not only that, the Truman had run out of ammunition. It needed to get out of Dodge. There was concern that if it went through the Suez Canal, it would be a sitting duck. It is a sitting duck in the Suez Canal. And if the Houthi obviously have weapons that can reach the Suez Canal, and the Truman very vulnerable there. So it needed to extricate itself along the coastline. And there was concern that the Houthi would be able to strike. So we needed to save our ships. This is humiliating for the United States. Absolutely humiliating for the United States. That's the story. The story isn't about F-16s and F-35s. The story is that the United States Navy was not only unable to defeat the Houthi, Ansarallah, but had put itself in a very exposed position where it could be subjected to tactical defeat, the sinking of ships. And the bigger story here is that if the Houthi can do this to the United States in the Red Sea, imagine what Iran could do in the Persian Gulf or in the Indian Ocean. So this is a lesson learned to the United States, and hopefully it's a humbling experience, one that we take on board. I don't want to get ahead of the game, but there's so much else involved in this, because the initiative wasn't the United States dealing with the Houthi or the Houthi dealing with the United States. Maybe Professor Marandi will correct me if I'm wrong, but Iran played a very important role in this, because Iran is in the midst of, I think, what's going to be a very successful negotiation, one that could bring in, at least potentially, an end to the threat of war between the United States and Iran. But it's a sensitive period of negotiations that could be undermined if the United States were humbled by Houthi, compelled to escalate to, as Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, said, hold Iran accountable. I mean, my God, we're in the midst of negotiations with the Iranians to try and resolve a major issue, and the Secretary of Defense is talking about bombing Iran. Bombing Iran with what? The same fleet that's under threat from the Houthi? I think the Iranians wisely stepped in and said, we need to de-escalate this situation so that these negotiations have a fair chance. There's no guaranteed outcome on these negotiations, but I've heard positive things coming out of the Iranian side that I haven't heard in a long time. And I've heard similarly positive things coming out from the United States. And it would just be a shame that this chance for a negotiated settlement on this major issue, Iran's nuclear program, and the potential lifting of sanctions and I'm not going to say normalization of relations, but stabilizing relations between the United States and Iran, that it would be put at risk because Ansarallah kicked America's butt in the Red Sea. So I think Iran played a major role in this, and that's the other aspect of the story that's so much more important than whether an F-16 was forced to take evasive maneuvers or an F-35 had to likewise, fire off chaff and flares and avoid being shot down.
Professor Marandi, go ahead. Your take on what Scott said.
I think that Scott is absolutely correct. The United States failed in the Red Sea. It was a catastrophic mistake. I think all of us were on different programs saying that this will end in failure. The only people who apparently didn't see it coming was the U.S. government for one reason or another. It's important that in this sense that Ansarullah was also not only able to fire its missiles and drones and harass the Americans. They lost 3 F-18s for one reason or another. They lost a number of very expensive drones, which were very key for their operations. But also the fact that F-35s in particular were threatened, according to the New York Times, shows that Ansarullah has a very high degree of sophistication. And if they can track U.S. stealth jets, then as Scott was alluding to in a different way, imagine what Iran can do in the Persian Gulf or the Indian Ocean, or even in the Red Sea, because Iran's reach goes all the way to the Mediterranean and the Red Sea. So I think it is a lesson for the Americans to learn that military conflict with Iran, a conventional war would end in failure. Ansarullah, from my understanding, from the very beginning, was managing escalation. And from my understanding, they do have the ability to strike the ships and to strike the aircraft carrier. But they chose not to use their more sophisticated weapons because they did not want extreme escalation. So, and this is true about Hezbollah in Lebanon as well. It's true about the axis of resistance. The whole policy in defense of the Palestinians has been death by 1,000 cuts, in the sense that not to push too far, not to push too hard, but to keep the pressure going. So, for example, well, there are capabilities that Hezbollah has that it didn't use for its own reasons. There are capabilities that Ansarullah have that they don't use. But I think it is important that the United States was forced to back down. With regards to the nuclear negotiations, it's very difficult to say. What Scott says is true, but it's true for today. But 5 minutes from now, we could have something on Truth Social, which is completely different. One of the things that I find interesting, which has nothing to do with Iran, is the fact that Trump backed down in the trade war against China, and he effectively capitulated. Now, that may be a failure for Trump, but it does show that he has the ability to change his position. And instead of just going down a one-way street, he has the ability to retreat. Now, he's very good at promoting himself, and he's very good at with the media, so he may be able to try to create an image for many that he succeeded with China. That's not really the point. The point is that he changed direction. So it is and the same is true with Ansarullah. He said Ansarullah capitulated. He used that word, in fact, but the reality was literally the opposite. But still, what is important is not whether he would, in this context, whether he was dishonest or not, or whether he was honest or not, but the fact that he was able to, instead of doubling down and going after Ansarullah further, or doubling down and continuing with the trade war with China and bringing down probably the U.S. economy to some deep recession at least, he changed course. And that is possible, therefore, with Iran. So when we hear some very, let's say, discouraging words from Witkoff, because to Witkoff, initially he spoke very positively and very reasonably. And then two things happened more recently. One was he retweeted the Secretary of Defense's tweet against Iran, which Scott alluded to, which surprised many that he would retweet that. The second was when he did an interview with Breitbart, and he said that no enrichment and that all has to go. But because of what we're seeing with regards to China and Yemen, but also some of the changes that are taking place, which I don't know really how far it's going to go, but there's direct negotiations with Hamas and that sort of thing. That to me means that it's possible that Witkoff in private could be saying something else. He could be more reasonable, because ultimately Iran's not going to accept the shutting down of its nuclear program or its enrichment program. Iran, and I think I should point this out, even though it's not directly linked to our discussion, enrichment for Iran is important because the United States has sanctioned everything in Iran. And even when Trump, or I'm not sure if it was during Trump or Obama, perhaps both, there was a period of time when Iran was importing gasoline, and they were trying to prevent Iran from importing gasoline. And so that led to this policy in Iran that we must be able, sort of like what Trump is nowadays saying about the United States economy, but we must become self-sufficient in certain things, and that includes the nuclear program, that includes energy, and that's why Iran will simply not compromise on enrichment, but on the principle of enrichment. But there is a possibility, obviously, that if there's a deal, Iran could end higher degrees of enrichment, or it won't destroy any of its equipment, but it could put some in storage or something like that. But again, because of some of the things that we've been seeing over the past few days, literally, I think I think it's fair to say that despite some of the things that Witkoff has said and done, I think it's quite possible that behind the scenes he's going to be more reasonable at the negotiating table, at least.
Yeah. By the way, one of the good signs, Scott, with Donald Trump and his attitude is the new sort of talks between the United States and Hamas. And they have released a prisoner a Israeli-American prisoner, and to show some sort of goodwill gesture to the United States. And do you find it right now? It seems that you follow the Israeli media. It seems that they're in panic right now. What's going on, in your opinion, with the case of Hamas?
You know, as Professor Marandi has noted, give Trump 24 hours and you're going to have a completely different, emotionally based, foundation of American policy. And then give him another 24 hours and it's going to shift all over the place. I can't explain why he does this. Is this strategy on his part? Is it that he's a weak-minded individual who simply repeats the last thing whispered into his ear by whatever advisors closest to him? It's very difficult to assess this. I've been trying to give Trump the benefit of the doubt. I've spent a lot of time trying to superimpose strategic thinking on his actions, shoehorning it in sometimes when it's difficult to do so. I can't. It's hard. I'll give you my take, but I'm prefacing it by this is very hard to do. It's very hard to understand what's going on. I think I'm done with giving Donald Trump grand strategic capacity, meaning, I don't view him as the modern day Clausewitz or Sun Tzu or masterful tactician as Strat. I view him as a very simple-minded man who is not able to comprehend fully the complexity of the issues he's articulating about. He acts on not on depth of understanding and knowledge, but on very shallow reasons. And because he is a narcissist, many of these reasons revolve around issues of his ego. And I think what we see with Israel is that he feels betrayed by Benjamin Netanyahu. I mean, it's as simple as if you've watched The Godfather, Godfather 2, Michael Corleone and Fredo. And Trump has now kissed Fredo and he's sending him out on a fishing boat, and Fredo's going to get a bullet in the back of the head. That's Netanyahu's fate. Netanyahu may not know it right now, but he messed with the Godfather. He lied to the Godfather. He betrayed the Godfather. He went behind the Godfather's back. He reached out to Michael Waltz. He set up a secret communication line with Michael Waltz and conspired with Michael Waltz to go against Donald Trump's policy objectives. And this is unforgivable from the Donald Trump world. And so now Benjamin Netanyahu is going to pay a price. And this price then translates into American policy. One of Benjamin Netanyahu's greatest domestic political weaknesses is the hostage issue. If you've been studying what's happening in Israel, you know that Netanyahu has lied to the Israeli people from day one about that. He has no intention of letting the hostages go. He will kill them all. And he wants to kill them all. He is trying to kill them all. He's not trying to rescue them. This is a man who lied to the Israeli people, tried to blame Hamas for the failure of the release of the hostages. He's under investigation right now, according to an article written by Seymour Hersh, and I respect Seymour Hersh and I respect his sources. Netanyahu, early on, the Israeli forces apparently captured some Hamas internal policy documents, and one of them was what Hamas's posture was vis-a-vis the hostages. And according to this document, there was some thinking on the part of some that Sinwar should take the hostages, leave Gaza, and take the hostages to Iran. But what was missing is how Sinwar and everybody came back and said, no, the hostages remain. We will stay here in Gaza. We're not doing that. So it was just a proposal put out by somebody. It was immediately shot down. But this document exists. So what Netanyahu did is sent one of his advisors to. This document is so secret that the Israelis refuse to acknowledge it exists. It's in a reading room in the Israeli intelligence headquarters, and you have to sign in. You're not allowed to take notes. You're allowed to read the document and leave. This guy went in there, copied the document verbatim, and came out. And Netanyahu released it on national TV, made reference to it as if to condemn Hamas. He's now under investigation for violating state secrets and for lying straight to the Israeli people. This hostage issue is emotional. You have the family of the hostages recognizing that this prime minister will kill their people. And so the United States had been respectful of Netanyahu's policy prerogatives because, of course, the Trump administration has, staffed itself with more pro-Israeli Zionists per square inch than any other administration. But that doesn't mean that Donald Trump is a pro-Israeli Zionist. It means he's a politician who understands the importance of the pro-Israeli lobby in facilitating his victory, etc. But when Netanyahu lied to him, Trump now has the weapons he has. How do you demonstrate the weakness of Benjamin Netanyahu and how he blames Hamas? What Trump did is he said, I'll negotiate direct with Hamas and I'll get the American freed. And it happened. Boom. Which proves all at once, all Netanyahu had to agree to is negotiations, and he could get the hostages freed. That the problem isn't Hamas, the problem is Netanyahu. Now Netanyahu has a huge political problem, and that's what Trump wants. And now Netanyahu is desperate. He's panicking. He's talking about an all-out war on Gaza. I can't predict what, like Professor Marandi said, wait 24 hours. Who knows what Trump's going to tweet or post on Truth Social. But I will say this. Trump has said that the United States will not support further military operations into Gaza. And if Netanyahu seeks to do that, we may be looking at a strategic break with Israel. A strategic break, not because it's the policy of the United States, because Michael Corleone has decided to put a bullet in the back of Fredo's head. As long as Netanyahu is the prime minister of Israel, and if he does things that are against what Donald Trump wants, there will be a price to be paid. Netanyahu is talking about detoxing Israel from American security. Good luck with that, Bibi. We run your damn country. We own your country. This is what I've said all along. Everybody's like, Israel owns America. I said, no, it doesn't. Not even close. We own Israel. Israel can't do anything without us. And if Netanyahu wants to try to be independent, he's betting on support from an American establishment that isn't going to go against Donald Trump on this one. Donald Trump has made some choices. I don't know how far this is going to go. Like you said, Marco Rubio could come whisper in his ear tomorrow, and Trump's going to, Benjamin Netanyahu is the greatest person in the world. I love him like a brother. He's great. Then the next day, Witkoff comes in and tells him something. Benjamin Netanyahu is the scum of the earth. He should be shot on sight. Who knows what this man-child who is the president of the United States is going to do? Because that's what he is, a man-child. This isn't an adult. This is a man-child with adult-like capability. This is the danger of giving a 5-year-old kid a loaded pistol. And that's what we've done by electing this man as our president. This is an embarrassment. I have never been more embarrassed in my life than the performance of this president, because it's not the performance of a rational actor. It's the performance of a narcissist, egomaniac who puts his own personal interests ahead of the nation that he's supposed to lead. But when it comes to Gaza and when it comes to Hamas, I mean, how do we assess this? I mean, you want me to say something like, it's amazing that the United States is now negotiating directly with Hamas. Well, it is amazing that we're doing that. I agree. But what does it mean? Is it reflective of a strategic shift that says we now recognize Hamas as a legitimate political body within the Palestinian nation? And when Trump says maybe he'll talk to the Saudis about recognizing a Palestinian state, that Hamas will be part of that governing authority? Because that goes directly against every pronouncement ever made by Trump about Hamas. So is this formal policy, or is this just the man-child doing something to get revenge on Netanyahu? It's impossible for me to say at this juncture.
Professor Marandi, your take on Hamas?
I just wanted to explain something that Scott said. I think that document, if I'm not mistaken, was misused by Netanyahu and his team and misinterpreted for the public to imply that the martyr Yahya Sinwar wanted to leave and take them, take the prisoners with him, but in reality was saying something different. He wanted to imply that it was his. But I think what Scott is saying is absolutely correct. But again, as he also pointed out, we don't know what's going to happen in a few hours from now. We don't know what Trump is going to post on Truth Social. Even if, for example, we do have a nuclear deal with the United States, it wouldn't be the JCPOA, because I was saying today to someone, it would have to be the JCPOA plus, in the sense that it would have to recognize Iran's technological advancements over the last few years, because it came at a great price. Scientists were martyred, and Iran was under sanctions, and the Americans are not going to compensate for that. And also, it's going to have to end the loopholes that existed in the original JCPOA, which Obama used to cheat Iran, and so did Trump until he tore up the deal. The United States, whenever would cheat Iran, there were no consequences for their actions. They paid no political price, let alone any other price. So a potential nuclear deal, if we ever get there, and that's not for certain, of course, would be substantially different from the JCPOA. It would have to be under. It would have to be more. It would have to take these issues into account. But even if we do have a deal with the United States, the problem goes back again to what Scott was saying, and that is, you sign a deal hypothetically, and then tomorrow you have something on Truth Social which completely negates everything and says, well, no, I don't like this deal, and we're going to have to do something else. So it makes working with the United States very, very difficult. I don't want to say impossible, because I don't want to, rule out any success. It just shows how complicated it is. Even the negotiations with China. What Trump did was he went back to where the United States was before Liberation Day. We have the same tariffs that existed back then. The only difference now is that besides the fact that a lot of damage has been caused, but also there's now a 3-month period where the two sides have to negotiate. And during these 3 months, business people don't know what to do. They won't know whether to purchase goods, to move their factories, to invest, not to invest, because there will be this sense of it's ambiguous where things will be in the weeks and months ahead. It's unclear, and I think that that's a problem that we're going to face with the United States and Iran. It's a problem that Ansarullah will have to face. If I was Ansarullah, which I'm sure they would. Right now, they're upgrading their military capabilities. They're bringing in new weapons. They're developing new technology. Why? Because we don't know, and they don't know definitely what's going to happen in the weeks ahead. So this is the problem with Trump. His supporters call it strategic uncertainty, but I think it's more the man-child definition. I think the man-child definition of Scott is more accurate. I think it's more of chaos than anything else. And this is something that we're going to have to deal with. Not just Iran, the Russians. I mean, one other very interesting thing has been how Trump has sort of evolved over the past few months with regards to Russia. He could have on day one ended the war because he had momentum. He had won all the swing states. He won the popular vote, and he said during his campaign that he's going to end the war. He could have stopped it. He could have given the Russians the key concessions that they needed. Russians probably would have given him some concessions to get this over with, but he would have had to give most of what Russia wanted, and then it would have been over. But he didn't do that, and now he's gradually, not completely, but sometimes he's sounding more like Biden nowadays. Now he's not Biden. He's not there, but Kellogg obviously seems to be as if he's a Biden employee. So the point is that we don't know where Trump is going to be on Russia, on Ukraine, where he's going to be on China, where he's going to be on global trade, where he's going to be on Iran, Yemen, Palestine in the weeks ahead. Everything is ambiguous. This, in my opinion, is actually in the long run beneficial to countries like Iran, because this uncertainty is causing countries to start to increasingly think about making decisions and excluding the United States. Now, of course, the trade war itself was an incentive for this, and other issues also created this incentive, the sanctions and so on. But I think that this chaos in Washington is another catalyst that will push the global majority, the global South, perhaps some in Europe, who knows, to rethink their place in the global order. And I think that's going to speeden the tilt away from the United States.
In Istanbul, Donald Trump somehow expected Vladimir Putin to be there, and Zelensky was there in Ankara, talk with Erdogan. But it seems that Russia has decided to send a delegation there to talk, to see what would be the atmosphere of the talks. How do you see the way that Russia is dealing with this sort of pressure? We saw they were just playing a game with Russia. Donald Trump, Zelensky, Europeans. How did you find it?
Well, nothing interesting there. I mean, it was expected. A Russian message is in the basically the crew which has been sent. Mr. Medinsky, those who don't know, he used to be the culture minister. He was there at the 2022 Istanbul talks when Bojo, on behalf of Biden administration, sabotaged them. But Russians are not idiots. I mean, anybody who comes and begins to spew the BS, essentially, that, yeah, Kremlin is naive. Well, you saw yourself how naive, quote unquote, Kremlin is. And so, yeah, they sent Mr. Medinsky, who obviously will act upon the instructions, but who himself has no qualifications whatsoever to conduct any kind of the serious negotiations. And they sent there two former and current chiefs of the general main, what is called main directorate, used to be the famous GRU. So that explains to you. And Mr. Peskov, speaking to CNN, spokesperson for Kremlin, he answered when they asked, is Putin going to be in any form, shape, so to speak, there? He said, absolutely not. You know what? There is this clown there in Trump administration, not that there are not enough clowns around him, Mr. Gorka. He's a fanatical Russophobe, and he is not really mentally adequate person, utterly incompetent militarily, and but he says that the meeting is imminent. Okay, whatever, Trump, Rubio, whatever. But the point is, it's not United States and NATO which play the game with Russia. It's actually other way around. But you have to understand, the people who spin this, they are journalists. Journalism is not a profession. It's not craft. It doesn't require any serious understanding of things, you know, and as a result, they had this, I only want to put forward this incredible meme. It's not
Este ya es
meme,
otro
really.
video, chingada madre. Con razón yo decía, ¿quién es este don? Pinche señor gritón. Andrei Marciano. No, chinga tu madre. Vamos a poner otro video, bandita. Esta es otra entrevista, bandita. desde hace un día, donde explican cómo el dejar que pase la ayuda a Gaza es un plan de Netanyahu para utilizar esa ayuda humanitaria, esos alimentos, medicina, ese combustible, para chantajear a los palestinos y obligarlos a moverse como corderitos a donde Israel decida que se va a repartir los víveres y de esa manera sacarlos del territorio mediante el hambre. Vamos a ver qué dicen aquí en este video de Middle East Eye, Ojo del Medio Oriente. Recuerden que todos los links van a estar en la descripción del video. Ya es el último que vemos y terminamos, bandita.
This is MEE Live's Deep Dive, where we dive into a story shaking up the world. After 80 days under siege, trucks carrying aid have entered Gaza following several days of delays at the Karim Shalom crossing, the single route Israel has approved for distribution. Faced with mounting pressure abroad, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu pledged last week to implement a new aid system in the enclave. But as details of that plan have emerged, they have done more to raise alarms than to relieve them.
מתחילת המלחמה אמרנו שכדי להשלים את הניצחון, להכריע את החמאס ולשחרר את כל חטופינו, שתי משימות שמשולבות זו בזו, יש תנאי אחד הכרחי. אסור לנו להגיע למצב של רעב, גם מבחינה עניינית, גם מבחינה מדינית. פשוט לא יתמכו בנו, לא נוכל להשלים את משימת הניצחון. יש לנו מלחימה עצומה, עצימה ועצומה. ויש התקרבות, אנחנו הולכים להשתלט על כל שטחי הרצועה. זה מה שאנחנו הולכים לעשות. ודבר נוסף, אני פשוט מצדיע למילואימניקים, הלוחמים שלנו בסדיר, הם עושים שם עבודה נהדרת, כולל הבוקר, אני לא יכול להיכנס לכל הפרטים, אנחנו לא מוותרים. כדי לעשות את זה, צריך לעשות את זה באופן כזה שלא יעצרו אותנו.
Here are three things we learned there. One, under Netanyahu's plan, access to aid distributions would be fully controlled by the Israeli military. Two, anyone Israel considers Hamas-affiliated will get nothing, and given the minimal amount of aid being allowed in, and the fact that Israel has repeatedly targeted medics, journalists, and civilians by claiming, without evidence, that they are Hamas-affiliated, there is cause to believe many civilians could be denied here. And three, the distribution will be done in partnership with a private charity known as the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. This was founded in February and is backed by the US and Israeli governments. Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich, head of the religious Zionism party, took personal credit for the plan on Monday.
הובלתי דרישה בלתי מתפשרת לשינוי של 180 מעלות באופן חלוקת הסיוע ההומניטרי, כך שהוא לא יגיע לחמאס ולא ישמש כסיוע לוגיסטי לאויב בשעת מלחמה. מינימום נדרש שיגיע לאוכלוסייה, פשוט כדי שהעולם לא יעצור אותנו ויאשים אותנו בפשעי מלחמה. אין מי שזעק את זה בכתב ובעל פה, בתוך הקבינט ומחוצה לו, יותר ממני, ואתם יודעים את זה. וברוך השם הצלחתי.
Here, Smotrich says the government's goal is to allow the minimum amount of aid required so the world does not stop us and accuse us of war crimes.
האוכלוסייה תגיע לדרום הרצועה ומשם בעזרת השם למדינות שלישיות. במסגרת תוכנית הנשיא טראמפ זה שינוי של מהלך ההיסטוריה, לא פחות.
And here, the finance minister describes a strategy of using aid to pull Gaza's population to the southern border, from where they can be removed from the strip altogether. Now, if true, this could amount to ethnic cleansing, and Smotrich says it will be done in the framework of President Trump's plan. But Israel's plan to create a handful of aid hubs exclusively in the south of the Strip, catering to a fraction of overall need, was swiftly condemned by the international groups who manage global aid at the moment, groups like the UN, who have firmly refused to comply. UNICEF spokesperson James Elder is joining us now to explain the UN and other groups' objections and update us on the current aid situation in Gaza. James, welcome to MEE Live.
Hi there.
This week, the UN released one of its most urgent warnings yet about the imminent starvation in Gaza, saying 14,000 babies were at immediate risk. For the past weeks, trucks of aid have been barred from entering Gaza while children just across the border go hungry. Have you ever seen anything like this?
No, this is largely unprecedented. Look, we've had situations, there's no doubt, where you get either a famine or famine-like conditions, but normally they're in very, very remote areas. They're very difficult to get to. They're often out of the world's attention. You need to do airdrops. It's a very inefficient way of getting aid. The difference here, of course, is that there is literally enough food to feed 1 million people for 4 months just on the other side of the border. As all your viewers know, Gaza is very, very close to where many people are living very well. So no, this is unprecedented because it's been a blockade. 20 months of indiscriminate attacks, killing an insane number of people, 15, 16,000 girls and boys. And then after a ceasefire showed what could be done in terms of improving the malnutrition status, letting people go home, even though home was putting a tent up over rubble, getting hostages home. This is a ceasefire. And then 11 weeks of a blockade. We've seen malnutrition rates double. We've seen, again, hospitals run perilously low on medical supplies. We see families, 9 out of 10 families have to choose with water. Do they drink it or do they use it to wash? This is the result. We've got to a point where those in Gaza should never have been to, but the level of desperation, or of depression is now at all-time highs on the back of this 11 weeks of an aid blockade.
Why then will the UN not comply with or reject Israel's plan to allow in small amounts of aid?
So the plan, a couple of reasons. The most simple reason is, of course, that the UN has a modality to bring in aid. This is what the United Nations does, whether it's Sudan or Afghanistan or Ukraine, Yemen. This is what the United Nations has been doing with very brave partners, very brave Palestinian national groups on the ground. This is what we've been doing since World War II. And as we saw during the ceasefire, around 500 trucks a day. So there's no need for a separate form of aid. There's no need to privatise it. And as you rightly said, the aim of that is to drag people, use it as bait, drag them from the north down to the south. So that's dangerous. It's a militarised zone. The whole point of humanitarian aid is you go to where the need is. That's because it's right in principle, but it's also right in practice. You have the elderly, you have the sick, you have an incredible number of injured people. So you cannot, in principle or practice, push people to the south and then even then have a handful of distribution points. During that ceasefire, the United Nations and our Palestinian partners on the ground were using about 400 different points to deliver aid. This private entity is looking at literally half a dozen, so half a dozen versus 400. At the same time, humanitarian aid isn't just about getting into the arms of a mum or of a grandfather. It's about supplying bakeries. It's about supplying hospitals. It's about rebuilding nutritional system, rebuilding water systems is a big thing UNICEF does. So there's so much more to humanitarian aid than this entity is offering. And as I say, beyond anything else, the umbrella to this is the United Nations and those brave partners on the ground have proved they can do what works if they're given the chance, if they're allowed to bring in the amount of aid that is required and to be able to do it safely. There are more United Nations colleagues have been killed in Gaza than in any other war since the advent of the United Nations.
Perhaps you can help us make sense of the situation today then, because some 90 aid trucks did enter Gaza today for the first time in 11 weeks. Does that mean Israel has temporarily agreed to resume international aid? Or does it mean that the UN is partially complying with Israel's new aid plan? Just help us make sense of this.
No, the aid plan that you refer to, that the private sector is not up and running, and it's very clear from the highest levels of the UN that they won't cooperate with it. They can't. It is, humanitarian principles should stand for something, but of course in Gaza we've seen, international norms and principles absolutely devastated in the same way we've seen agriculture, the economy, hospitals, the lives of girls and boys devastated. Practically, it just doesn't work. So what's happening now is that the United Nations is being allowed to take in aid because of that severe international pressure, but not the amount we need. Now, look, of course, we welcome every truck, we welcome every pallet. When you're someone like me who talks every day to those on the ground in Gaza and hears from mothers who haven't eaten for 2 days because they give their food to their children. Or you speak to a grandparent who buys a portion of a fruit, buying a portion of a fruit. Of course, any part of aid, anything, is important, but we cannot pretend that this trickle is a solution to the man-made catastrophe. So we can't let this be tokenistic. We can't let this be a smokescreen. If this is a real intent to stop a famine in the Gaza Strip, to make sure doctors have the medical supplies they need, to make sure disease doesn't spread, then we need hundreds of trucks a day. That needs a full facilitation from the Israeli authorities. It needs multiple routes across the Gaza Strip, not just the current one that we have now. And we insist that it means we can get to the south, to Rafah, to Khan Yunis, to Jabalia in the north, not just to a few pockets on the Gaza Strip. We have to be able to reach everyone.
Now, the US private charity that is supposedly going to start delivering Israel's aid plan from May is backed by the US and by Israel. Is there anything that you can tell us about it? What do we know about the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation? Are they obliged to follow, international procedure, standardized international law when it comes to the delivery of aid? What do we know about them?
Yeah, I mean, yes, it would be a complete aberration for all the reasons I say. So we don't know a lot more than we read, and that their aims are a handful of distribution points, and again, forcing people to move from the north to the south. The capacity isn't there. The distribution points are not there. There's no discussion about medicines, anesthetics. There's a huge number of women who are giving preterm birth in Gaza. Those babies need incubators. UNICEF's got dozens of incubators on the other side of the border. So what we know is that they seem to be a private sector, not a charity, a private sector organisation designed to support the forced displacement of people from the north to the south against every single humanitarian principle, and utterly unworkable.
And final question, Netanyahu has justified his aid proposal as necessary to prevent looting by Hamas. How real is the threat of looting to aid groups in Gaza, and how central is Hamas to that problem?
Well, the UN's been very, very clear on the problem of looting, and that's when you break a society, when you remove all sense of law and order, when you then restrict, block, completely deny anything that a person requires to survive for 11 weeks, and then allow a single route, only give one road in, there will be looting. The United Nations has spoken about that. That's why we need so much more aid and so many more routes. There was no looting during the ceasefire when we flooded the Gaza Strip with aid. So that's a very, very clear point to make. When it comes to aid diversion, it's frustrating. It's very, very frustrating. It has been for a long time. For an organisation like UNICEF, as I say, we are last mile delivery, vaccine into the arm of a child, nutritional food into the mouth of that child. The proof is simply not there. And if you want to see the truth, as we've said for a long time, allow international journalists on the ground to stand side by side, they're very brave Palestinian journalists, and show the reality to global audiences.
James Elder, thank you for joining us.
Pues cámara, bandita, eso sería todo por la transmisión de hoy. Gracias por habernos acompañado. Espero que lo puedan entender el video si saben inglés, y si no, espero poder ponerle subtítulos. Cámara, bandita, sigan promoviendo el fin del genocidio, el fin de la guerra contra Palestina. Nos vemos.